Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Season 4 of Shadowlands possibly being the best season ever of Mythic Plus. That's a pretty big statement to make, but I'm going to talk about why I might think that's the case. Obviously, I can only talk about my own perspective personally. Obviously, I can garner insights from others as well, but my perspective is coming from somebody who, likes Mythic Plus but doesn't love Mythic Plus, who pugs most of his keys, not with groups, not with guild groups, so therefore would also fall into kind of like a casual person. Casual person pugs a lot. However, I am doing, it's not really worth it for me to do something that's less than a plus 15 key, I guess, unless I was like farming a specific item or something like that from a dungeon. So I am doing, I'm not doing like low keys or whatever, which is a segment of the population as well. Like, people do plus 4s, plus 5s, and, get their gear that they want that way. And that's fine too. And of course, some people are pushing plus 30s and they play the game that way. And that's fine as well. So my perspective is somewhere in the middle, maybe leaning high end, but kind of in the middle of Mythic Plus. And so I'm having a ton of fun this season. I actually got my KSM faster than I ever have before while only running 2 organized groups, 2 guild groups. The rest of my keys were completely pugged as a rep paladin, and it was the fastest I ever got it. And I say that in past times, in BFA one season, I think in the first 2 weeks I did like 10 dungeons with guild groups, and I still did not get my KSM the second week, let alone like early in the second week. So this has been a pretty really solid season for me. It's been really easy and kind of fun, right? Because sometimes easy is fun. Easy in that, yeah, you still have to do the mechanics. You still can't be, a complete idiot. I still had a couple runs where people rage quit and like lower cars on and stuff because some people just didn't know what to do, and the key was completely destroyed. Like, like at the first boss, we're like 20-30 minutes in, and people check out, which I'm totally okay with, by the way, at that point. Just so many people didn't know what to do and whatnot. And so, like, you still have those. You still have to. So it's not easy. It's just like, it feels good, right? And sometimes feeling good can be called easy, and sometimes it is. But I think it's really good. And I think there's a combination of reasons why this season feels so good. I think a big reason is that there's no Valor cap. I think every dungeon you do kind of rewards you, so you're rewarded to kind of grind dungeons. I think there's a large segment of the WoW player base who likes to grind things, who are more like traditional Diablo players, like, old school Diablo, where you just grind out your stuff over and over, or Path of Exile, where you just grind out your stuff. And I think some people really like that. I know THD from Liquid probably loves that. He's a big proponent of artifact power and stuff like that. So having something to grind does feel good as a WoW player, at least to many of us. Maybe not to everybody, but to many of us it does feel good to be able to grind something and have each dungeon mean something, even if it's not a lot, until we're literally at max that we can upgrade our gear with Valor. At that point, then not, but that'll probably be a month, 2 months, and then for more casual players, probably 3 or 4 months into the patch, which is, pretty good, honestly. If a normal patch cycle is 6 months, for this patch, it'll only be like 4 months, so it'll be perfect. But for a normal patch cycle of 6 months, that's not a ton of dead time. Plus, you can get on your alts and do the same thing where you're just farming the Valor out as well, which is good. So I think that not having the Valor cap is a huge thing, why a lot of people are having fun, from casual players to high-end players. I think another thing is the dungeon rotation. This cannot go without saying, that switching up all these dungeons has been really, really cool. I'm not a fan of Grimrail personally, being a Mythic Plus dungeon, but, we've also had really bad fixes on it so far with Quaking and Sanguine, aerial denial. When you're stuck in these small little areas, I think that can be a little bit annoying, obviously, as players. I think there might be some change on thoughts in the coming weeks as we don't have area denial effects going on in the key. Some people might like Grimrail because it's kind of short, doesn't have a lot of bosses. It is straightforward linear, but there's not like a ton of useless trash. You just kind of go through that train cars where there's a decent amount of trash, but that's not too bad if you're not area denied of where you can stand. So yeah, I think that could be looked upon differently as well. And just overall, I really like Iron Docks, honestly. I think that ended up being a good choice. I can't remember what my 2 choices were. The slag mines, blood moss slag mines, and then I can't remember what the other one was my choice, but Ubers, I think. Those were my choices for the vote, but I actually kind of like Iron Docks. I think it's fine. I know some people don't like it, but I like Iron Docks a lot. Obviously, I like Kara just because I enjoyed it so much in Legion, running Karazhan. Again, bringing it back, and then Mechagon was a solid dungeon in BFA, and it's still a solid dungeon now. Junkyard's like super easy, which actually, again, kind of makes it fun. And yeah, so I really like this switching over of dungeons. We still have the Talzavesh dungeons. At least it's only like the second tier of these, second season of these. But I actually like the Talzavesh dungeons as well. So I'm pretty much overall happy. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Grimrail. I didn't vote for it, and I don't think it's the best Mythic Plus dungeon. But I think I will like it a little bit more when the fixes are not quite as bad. So I think going forward in the Dragonflight, how at least the first two seasons they have it set up to be where it's going to be completely different dungeons between the first two seasons. And who knows what they're going to do in season 3. Perhaps bring back some old ones, mix in with a mega dungeon. They usually do a mega dungeon in that part of the expansion as well. So that could be interesting as well there. Could possibly have like 3 seasons in Dragonflight of all new dungeons, and then like the 4th season where like it's like everybody's favorites or something like that, like a grab bag of everybody's favorite dungeons. I think that would be pretty cool too. Who knows what they're going to do, but I think this is a huge part of it. Going in fresh, it's like the beginning of an expansion, right? Like the first time I did each key on Fortified Tyrannical, which it's only 2 weeks, right? The first time you do each one, it feels like a new dungeon, effectively, right? That you haven't done before, or you haven't done in a very, very, very long time. And even now, even though Mechagon was just in BFA, it's been a long time since we've been there, guys. I mean, this has been a long expansion, even though we haven't got that much content. So yeah, I think switching over the dungeons has been another really, really good thing. I like to see that continuing going forward. I know that's the plan for Dragonflight. Hopefully they can be creative with the entire expansion, not just season 1, season 2. But I think that's another huge thing. And then lastly, I think, and not necessarily lastly, but the last point that I'm really going to drive home here is the seasonal fix. So we've actually had now 2 seasonal fixes that aren't really punishing that much, but help you out quite a bit. So obviously, as a rep paladin, was really, really good for me last season. And, I still do miss a little bit. Don't get me wrong. Was really good, just having wings up for basically every pull. Very, 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 very good. But these affixes are kind of cool too, where you just get to stack up a stat really high. I found myself, haste is like the best for ret overall for DPS, for like overall DPS. And it's really cool because you, for ret paladins, the haste will make your set bonus proc more. And then you'll get like to spam Wake of Ashes more and stuff like that, which is cool for when you don't have wings, because you're not going to have wings every pull like you would with but you do get to kind of spam your Wake of Ashes and kind of keep you close. And then during an actual wings pull, you get to be at the top or towards the top on DPS for that pull. And then, you're not quite as far down on the pulls where you don't have wings as you would be otherwise. And of course, it's helping other classes out a ton too, stacking up whatever stat. It just makes them OP. My class doesn't really have that. Haste, like I said, is good, but it's like haste is better for other classes. But everyone gets to stack something. That's really cool for them. But I have found myself like on Tyrannical, actually on a lot of the keys, I like to go with Verse a little bit, just because some of the bosses, mechanics just hit really hard naturally and do a ton of your health. So if you can kind of reduce that amount of damage, that's like unavoidable damage, right? Like just a mechanic that hits the whole group or whatever. If you can reduce some of that unavoidable damage, I think that's actually really good. Even though the verse is scaled down. Of course, the other argument is with the haste, you just kill it faster and you deal with less of the mechanics, right? So it's kind of how you look on that. I personally kind of like the verse on the Tyrannical, and like I did a couple verse on this Fortified, and I'm like, this doesn't feel necessary at all. So, I've been pretty much stacking haste up, but just having an affix, the lieutenant mob or whatever is the only one that's a little bit hard. It's normally it's pretty much just a benefit because the dreadlords are just easy to kill. Normally, they do a little bit of a heal. The nightmare clouds on the ground are a little bit trolly sometimes. Don't get me wrong, but I like having just a little bit of something to do at least. Dodging a puddle is at least something to do. A puddle that moves around. It's very annoying for a melee player, I'll say that. I wish they could make that a little bit more of an affix for a ranged player, although the Carrion Swarm often points at the range players, and they do get hit by it a lot, at least in my groups. So I don't think those are very punishing at all. and that they give you a little bit of haste. And then the lieutenant, some people don't like the lieutenant mob. I actually kind of like it. It's like a mini boss in the dungeon, in each dungeon that you have to do. I kind of like grabbing more trash and cleaving off of it, and then when he puts his shield up, everybody just single target into it. I know that's not what everyone does, but in theory, everybody single targets into the shield, interrupts, goes back to cleaving off of it. You can kind of pull more into it if you want, and yeah, it's kind of a cool little lieutenant mob, honestly, and it gives you a ton of your stat or whatever. And so I really enjoy the affix overall. I think it's really fun. I also like the idea, and something that I think they should consider going forward, is your character is getting stronger as the dungeon goes. So by the time you get to the last boss, you're much stronger than you were at the start. You might have, anywhere from 20 to 40% more of a stat or something like that. And so you're much stronger than you were at the beginning of the dungeon. And so I think that's extremely valuable to be, lets you make up for mistakes early on. It lets you come back. Your key's not dead early on because you can make up a lot of time by stacking up these stats and making your character stronger as you go. In a way, it's it's not like Torghast or like a roguelike, but in a way it is, right? Where you're just getting stronger as you go. There's no nuanced choice, obviously, although that would be very cool. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool the way it is, where your character is getting stronger as you go, whereas the other ones are just like making you stronger for a moment, and you're not any stronger on the first one than you were the last one. Like the makes you stronger because you get your cooldown back and you get to do more cooldowns. But like the first you get isn't any stronger than the last you get. This is kind of cool because each one just makes you a little bit stronger, and it's additive, right? So I think that's something they should look at going forward. I think this makes it really fun, honestly. By the time you get to the last boss, you're pumping. You have if I'm stacking haste and I got 50 something 60% haste, I don't need heroism. I don't need bloodlust. I'm pumping, man, with all this haste, and it feels really good. I'm not gonna lie. So I think that's something else that they should look into going forward, and why this season seems to be so cool and so much of a success for Mythic Plus. I know the high end people are loving it. Everything I'm seeing from high end people, they're loving it. More people are like coming back and playing Mythic Plus that maybe took a break from doing Mythic Plus. I'm enjoying it more. I'm not a Mythic Plus player. I know a lot of people in my guild are enjoying it a lot, playing it, just doing tons of dungeons. I know there's a rogue in my guild that has very similar thoughts on World of Warcraft as me, and he did more dungeons already this season than he did last season. And so he's having obviously a good time, at least early on, and it'll wear off, right? It'll wear off. It's a matter of how long it lasts. I do think for most people it'll last at least 2 months. I know like the highest end people, in another week or two, it'll be like, okay, I already got all my gear, now I'm just pushing keys, is this fun or not? But I think for most people it'll probably be more like 2 months ish where it lasts, which isn't terrible. I think that's part of the downside of having no Valor Cap, is you get all your gear really fast and you're running all these dungeons, getting all this Valor, getting all this gear. And so that can be a downside to it because you're front loading everything. But I think it doesn't outweigh the fact that it's fun. And there's other things that you could do, that you could add to the game or whatever, to make that a different experience or make it fun. Maybe have like a dungeon raid or something that's like super hard, right? So people keep talking about this will be the last thing. So sometimes I just get going here. A lot of people talk about making Mythic raiding like only for cosmetics only. What would happen if there was like a mega dungeon kind of thing, right? And it's not Mythic Plus for the entire expansion. Maybe in the next expansion they turn it Mythic Plus, but there's like a mega dungeon that is a 5-man raid that is tuned for you to have the absolute best gear. So like your best in slot. So it's tuned super high. Just really, really hard. It doesn't come out until a month or two in, so people can't even do it until they get the gear. Comes out like a month or two into the patch, the super dungeon, and people can prog on it and try to unlock these cosmetic rewards. And you could also make like a heroic version and a normal version of it if you want, just so people can do it, right? Like regular folks can just do it. And even like a Mythic Zero version or something. And the Mythic Zero version drops like still like really good loot or something. But then you like activate the challenge mode, however you'd want to do it. But something to give people more to do after that first couple months, I think could be useful, because I do think the hype's going to die out on this at some point. And the other thing is just making alts more easy accessible, so that way you can replayability of it. In this season, it is fairly replayable. The conduits and stuff, for example, are caught up. But I think you do have to have that as well. Even if you don't do any kind of weird challenge dungeon, I think you have to make the alt replayability really high as well for it to kind of keep the hype, keep the momentum going. Because there's a lot of hype right now. I know it's going to die down probably in about 2 weeks when the high-end players get bored. That's probably when the hype will die down a little bit on it. But I think overall it's a massive success. Like I said, there's many things I want to see them carry forward going on Dragonflight and then even after that. So that's it for this one, guys. I'm having a ton of fun in Mythic Plus this season. Hopefully you are too. This is a great time to start if you don't do Mythic Plus normally, because start doing a +2 and look at all the haste you have at the end of your +2 or mastery or crit or whatever. It's pretty wild. So as always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.